A US drone base on the Cocos Islands makes perfect sense, according to one of the country's former top military leaders. Peter Lay was Chief of the Australian Army for 6 years until 2008, and now heads Canberra University's National Security Institute.
Think about the importance of the Indian Ocean for global communications, particularly the sea lines of communications out in that region. It makes a lot of sense that we should look how we might, in conjunction with our major partner and ally, look at how we'd be able to conduct surveillance.
The US bolstering its regional presence has been welcomed by the Defence Minister.
We do see the Indian Ocean Rim rising in importance.
Australia is one of several countries, including the US, that's upping its manned aircraft capabilities with the Joint Strike Fighter project. But surveillance drones and their lethal brothers, unmanned combat aerial vehicles or UCAVs, are poised to become the biggest combat system in America's Air Force. And Australia needs to think hard about its options too.
We've got airborne early warning and control aircraft, where we've got airborne refuelling capabilities. We've got a vastly more capable aircraft. I'm not sure that we're getting the advantage of the technology in this system of systems. I think we probably need to consider very carefully, is about 100 the number, or could it be fewer? And perhaps take that leap into these new technologies and these new generations as we move closer to UCAV aircraft.
And while Peter Lay is certain Australia should be considering combat and surveillance drones as part of its own defence mix, he's also questioning whether Australia needs 100 Joint Strike Fighters, which are already an expensive and controversial option and a long way from being perfected.
We're working on the presumption that we need about 100. I'm just not sure that we've fully justified that number of about 100. It seems to me pretty suspiciously close to the number of FA-18s and F-111s that we've had, and before that other types of aircraft, and really that sort of stuff was set in the days of Menzies.
The 2009 Defence White Paper recommended if Australia was to build the defence force it needs, the defence budget should be 3% of GDP annually. But that's not been the case.
We certainly know that Defence have been handing money back, and the Minister seems quite ready to do that. If they can't spend it properly, of course, it shouldn't stay in defence. But the defence capability plan that was set as part of the 2009 budget is a bit behind. We're seeing some problems with some of the projects.
Recently, Stephen Smith's stormy relationship with some senior military figures over his handling of the Skype sex scandal at the Australian Defence Force Academy has been made very public. But rumours of more serious difficulties are being overstated, according to several senior military and public service figures Lateline has spoken to. Which isn't to say there aren't tensions.
The Defence Minister is by definition a civilian, and that carries a certain baggage with it as well in military circles. So I think it's a relationship that's almost doomed to be fraught.
Stephen Smith's concerns aren't confined to the air, and there are worries that there'll be a gap in Australia's maritime defences, with the Collins-class submarines due to be phased out from 2025. Defence analysts say plans for their replacement should be well underway by now.
We want a very large, fast, long-endurance, conventional submarine that has many of the attributes of a nuclear submarine. But there's a lot of sensible reasons for us not to have a nuclear submarine. So as a result, we've got to work out whether we're going to go for a very ambitious program to design and build our own conventional, or whether we can scale back our ambition a bit and go for something a bit more modest. And they're really difficult questions.
The Collins class was built and designed in Australia, but plagued with problems from the very start. It ran over budget, and there were technical and operating difficulties that have only recently been overcome. Being the person who makes the decision on new subs might torpedo a Canberra career.
I don't think Collins is making life any easier for people who have to decide about the future submarine. It's very hard to decide to spend tens of billions of dollars on a future submarine when the current ones have been underperforming.
Andrew Davies from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute says designing and building a new Australian submarine could cost 3 times as much as buying a ready-made and tested model.
The cost of an off-the-shelf fleet of 12 submarines would be somewhere in the order of $10 billion. Now, we've costed the most ambitious possible future submarine as somewhere north of $30 billion.
And it's not clear who has the will to make that decision. Hamish Fitzsimmons, Lateline.